Why is Trump so gay for dictators?
Why is he so gay?
For dictators? Yeah, he's gay for dictators. He likes that dictator Bobby.
He's got a dictator kink.
Yeah, that's it. That's the Gen Z definition of Trump's tyrannical political views.
What's that coming over the hill? Is it a monster? Is it a monster?
Look, I'm not saying Trump winning would be like the South winning the Civil War and the Nazis winning World War II all in one. But if Donald walks like a duck and sounds like a duck,
Will not replace us! Jews will not replace us! Jews!
I'll never forget that. You will not replace us. It was 4 years ago that a group of white nationalists descended on the college town of Charlottesville, Virginia. A car driven by one of them plowing into a crowd of counter-protesters, killing 32-year-old Heather Heyer and hurting more than a dozen others.
We begin tonight with that breaking news, a horrific scene in Charlottesville, Virginia, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence and chaos.
You also had people that were very fine people on both sides. They're poisoning the blood of our country. It's the enemy from within, all the scum that we have to deal with that hate our country. That's a bigger enemy than China and Russia.
We have some sick people, radical left lunatics, and I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
Let's have trial by combat.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. We will stop the steal. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country. Our country. Our country has been under siege for a long time.
Get the fuck out of here!
One man flashed his handgun at a group of journalists.
Stop the steal! It's our country, we want it back! Fuck these Democrats! Where's that?
Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Urging his thousands of followers to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue and fight like hell. Less than an hour later, the first violence at the Capitol. The siege lasts 3 hours, with at least 140 officers injured. 5 people, including Officer Brian Sicknick, would die in the riot or its aftermath.
well, it's a fucking duck, isn't it? What's more is his relationship with this radioactive rat-human hybrid, waging an imperialistic war in Ukraine. That's a cause for concern around the globe. Over his 25 years in power, Putin has murdered his political rivals, investigative journalists, all but ending the freedom of the press inside Russia, and launched bloody campaigns of terror in former Soviet states, including Chechnya, Georgia, and most recently in Ukraine. With Moldova or NATO members in the Baltics or even Poland next in his sights. He's now wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes, specifically the sickening policy of abduction and trafficking an estimated 20,000 Ukrainian children taken in eastern Ukraine into Russia for adoption or sent to pro-Russian education camps. He's been accused of genocide, and beyond that, it was proven as early as January 2017 in a joint report by the CIA, FBI and NSA confirming that there had been Russian interference in the 2016 election. It was revealed Russia's objective was to undermine the confidence of Americans in their electoral system and to boost Donald Trump's chances of victory. He would later go on to be impeached twice, defeated in 2020, stoke an armed insurrection in the storming of the Capitol, and become the first former president to be charged, then found guilty of a felony. Putin's happy. Trump denied there was any contact between the campaign and Moscow. However, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said in 2016 there had indeed been communication between Moscow and the Trump campaign. And the Russian agents involved remain on the FBI's wanted list. In fact, just 3 minutes after Hillary conceded to Trump in 2016, Vladislav Nikonov, a member of Russian parliament, made this statement to rapturous applause. 3 minutes ago, Hillary Clinton acknowledged her defeat in the US presidential elections. And just seconds ago, Trump began his speech as president-elect. I congratulate all of you on this. They systematically went out to get Trump elected. Twitter admitted in 2018 that 50,000 Russian-linked accounts used its service to post material in the lead up to the 2016 election. And these posts have reached 680,000 Americans, where in swing states, as little as 10 to 12,000 votes can be the margin of victory. This mass interference undoubtedly played a role in securing him the White House. So then, when Trump starts calling the 2016 popular vote, which he lost to Hillary, and the 2020 general election results rigged, with no evidence to prove it, the allegation again plays right into the hands of Putin and other dictators who are looking to undermine democracy. And don't forget, Trump was impeached by Congress for a 2019 call to Ukrainian President Zelensky, where he threatened to withhold military aid to Ukraine unless Zelensky launched an investigation into Joe Biden. Trump and Putin have also kept their satanic bromance alive, with the two speaking 7 times since the Mar-a-Lago Moscow file left office. But the real and present danger comes from Trump's current policy towards the war in Ukraine. He's previously threatened to cut all military aid and said he could end Russia's war within 24 hours. This is the major issue the US allies in NATO, the EU and the G7 all agree upon. That handing Putin a deal now would be a win for him and a loss for the rest of us. Not just Ukraine, that would lose a third of its territory. It would also set a frightening precedent for any other imperialistic dictator that the US and the West will eventually bow to pressure. That's why Trump's soft, little spoon relationship with Putin and his policy towards Ukraine are not just bad ideas, handing America's enemies a win, but also provides them a frightening blueprint for the future. And now with reports of North Korean troops poised to fight for Russia on the front line, although there are some reports that some of the North Koreans are already switching sides before they've even fired a bullet. However, the Russians' evolving alliance with Kim, China and Iran is no joke, and the stakes have never been higher. It's our systems of free democracies that they're trying to undermine and attack. The last thing we need in the White House is Putin's wee friend Trump.
New and final report tonight on what Russia did in 2016. It comes from the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee, and it's not good. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee releasing its final report, declaring the 2016 Trump campaign had repeated contacts with Russian operatives. Among the new findings, the report saying Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign chairman, represented a grave counterintelligence threat, determining he gave polling information to Konstantin Kilimnik, who the committee describes as a Russian intelligence officer.
Polling data to a political campaign is a blueprint. It's a roadmap of the entire campaign. It would be a guide for them just like it would be a guide for the campaign.
Senate investigators also concerned that Manafort may have been involved in the Russian efforts to hack emails from the Democrats' 2016 presidential campaigns, emails later published by WikiLeaks. And despite President Trump's claim he didn't remember speaking to his then advisor Roger Stone about WikiLeaks, the committee saying they believe he did. The president recently commuted Stone's sentence, prompting critics to claim it was a reward for Stone's silence.
Multiple sources tell ABC News the Senate committee alerted the Justice Department a year ago to concerns that several members of President Trump's inner circle, including Don Jr. and Jared Kushner, misled their investigators.
Well, it's a fucking duck, isn't it? Immigration is another top issue for both the Harris and Trump campaigns, with both sides planning to enact very different but equally tough policies. Trump is promising mass deportations, while Kamala has pledged to bring back the $118 billion bill, which was co-written by both Republican and Democratic senators and blocked by Trump's MAGA-controlled House earlier this year, which includes many of the policies the right has been seeking for the past 20 years, including the end of catch and release and a huge increase in the number of agents on the border. Trump's plan is typically more bombastic with little substance. Remember, he was going to build that wall. Now it's mass deportations. The problem is what happened last time Trump and his creepy sidekick Stephen Miller got their hands on immigration. It ended up with kids in cages. Trump's family separation plan resulted in around 5,000 children being separated from their families, and about 1,400 aren't confirmed to be reunited with their families to this day. And these images were broadcast on news stations all around the world.
Inside this old warehouse in South Texas, the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol is keeping hundreds of immigrant children in cages created by metal fencing. The U.S. Border Patrol on Sunday allowed us to briefly visit this facility where it holds families arrested at the southern U.S. border, responding to new criticism and protests over the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy and resulting separation of families.
In many cases, mothers were separated from their children and processed in different locations, or even sent back over the border, while the kids remained in custody in the USA. And as this policy was implemented in secret, led in the shadows by the malign efforts of Count Fuckula Stephen Miller, there was no official record of where mothers and children were located, with no efforts by the Trump administration to fix this issue. Trump dumped this clusterfuck of a situation on the desk of incoming President Joe Biden in 2020, who was at the same time dealing with the cosmic clusterfuck that was Trump's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. So to look at his new mass deportation policy, it's fair to forecast that this is also going to be a total mess and potentially make the US responsible for a humanitarian disaster. When Trump was last in office, his policies caused an unprecedented build-up of migrants in northern Mexico. Again, with children and the most vulnerable suffering the most. And we know Donald. He will fuck this up. He'll break the law in the process and show a complete disregard for the human suffering in his wake. Mass deportations would also forever change the lives of millions of Latin and Hispanic American citizens, as their communities and job sites are turned upside down by ICE, and long-standing vulnerable members of their community are picked up as easy targets by immigration. And the main thing he did was actually block legal immigration. This has been his core political strategy since day one. Scare poor white Americans and stoke up historical racial divides within the country, so he can get their support for his tax cut for the richest 1% of Americans, and they won't ask any questions as he dismantles federal departments and programs that support hundreds of millions of Americans to make the super rich even richer. The human cost of Trump's anti-immigrant populism has been extensive. The most despicable and frankly un-American actions were those against young children, their mothers, and the most vulnerable refugees. This was the main effect of Trump's far-right plan. When people call him a fascist, it's that kind of stuff that takes him from being a conservative to somebody on the far right. Throw in the cult of personality around him, and it all starts to look a bit sinister. For a culture in the US and the wider West that celebrate the Allies' defeat of Nazi fascism in the 1940s and the totalitarian Eastern communism of the Cold War, and with the rise of this militaristic, fascistic, imperialist Russia and a communist dictatorship in China, how can a guy who doesn't stand for the democratic values of our system and the enshrined values of human rights we fight to uphold lead the fight against America's enemies? History has shown us that these values are the antidote to the threats of authoritarianism we face today. And please don't forget the Supreme Court's ruling earlier this year that grants presidents absolute immunity from prosecution for crimes they commit while in office. So a vote for Donald Trump in 2024 could very well be the last ever vote for a POTUS and the first vote for a DOTUS, dictator of the United States.